But let's move on to our movie of the day, Black Widow.
Wait, can I do it? Okay. A film about Natasha Romanoff in a quest between the films Civil War and Infinity War. Natasha Romanoff, also known as Black Widow, confronts her darker parts of her ledger. When a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises, pursued by a force, also known as the Taskmaster, will stop at nothing to bring her down. Literally bring it down, because they bring down a...
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Sorry, no spoilers. Will bring her down to do nothing. Ewan, you can censor this shit.
She definitely doesn't bring down a...
Natasha must deal with her history as a spy. Not like a spy like James Bond, but like a spy similar to kind of like Rowan Atkinson in Johnny English. And the broken down relationships.
Because she's a fucking joke.
According to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, she is, because obviously they won't do a movie within her lifespan. They will do it after she dies.
Okay, so
and the broken
Black
down
Widow
relationship left in her wake long before she becomes an Avenger. Not like she was an Avenger in Avenger 1 and Avenger 2 and any other fucking Marvel movie that she was in besides.
You got this wrong.
Okay, can I just say, can we start this review off with just touching on the character? Was it just me, or did it feel like she just had no character in this?
She had no character. She was half a character in this movie.
Yeah, and it was like on her way to become an Avenger, but it's post her being an Avenger,
dude.
and
She's
losing that status. This film
like,
had no idea.
Avengers
what it
1.
It should have been
she
made
was an
before
Avenger.
Avengers.
She was an Avenger in Avengers 1.
This should have been made.
Avengers
before
2,
the Avengers.
Age of Ultron. She was an Avenger. She was an Avenger in Iron Man 2. She's an Avenger.
She was a spider.
Okay, fine. She was an incy-bincy little spider, okay? And then up until Avengers 1, she became part of that group. She was part of that fucking 360 goddamn camera turn, and she's a motherfucking Avenger.
She was part of that 360.
Was it a reference to Scarlet's Web that depicts with
In Arachnophobia? Mm-hmm.
You mean Charlotte's Web?
Charlotte's
Arachnophobia.
Web, yeah.
Scarlet's Web.
Scarlet's Web.
Scarlett Johansson's Web. This is so
Okay.
meta. Oh my god.
All right.
I've untapped a new sort of reference here. Damn.
Are we doing spoilers? Because I really think we should just jump
Yeah,
straight
we're
into
jumping
them.
straight into spoilers.
Let's jump straight into spoilers.
Exactly,
Let's do it.
yeah.
So let's start off straight at the start.
Lachlan's got a lot to get off his chest.
Let's get straight up at the start. Okay, cool. So what the fuck was that opening? Like, the opening was basically just two kids hanging out.
Playing Exorcist.
That's all it was.
But, like, that's what I mean. It was so... All these characters, to me, were so... We need backstory. We need them to have banter. We need them to have this.
We don't
But there's
need
so little
backstory,
effort
though.
put into
We
it.
have
They're
the
not real
backstory
characters.
of Black Widow.
But they did not feel like real characters. They felt like by the book. They felt very, like, just kind of, like, vague and blandly written. And, to be honest, she was probably one of the least characters in the entire film, and it's supposed to be her movie. But she felt almost secondary. She was just in it more.
It's funny enough because it's like they wanted to focus on Florence more. Like
Because she's going to be the next...
she's
Black
well,
Widow.
okay. If they're going to do the next Black Widow and they move it on, okay, cool, sure. You want to kind of transition that movie
Are
over.
they doing Dark Avengers, maybe? That kind of seems what they're going towards with the new Captain America dude,
Yeah,
whatever his
yeah.
name is.
But
Or working for that lady.
But obviously, like, this Black Widow movie doesn't feel like it's the Black Widow we know. We know her more as Natasha. She's not a Black Widow. She's defected, right? So we know this character, and we're expecting this movie to be about her. Funnily enough, though, it's not about her. It's about her backstory. So what we've come into this movie about is expecting to learn a little bit more about her, but it kind of just like takes a right turn to be like, look at
Touch on it at all. We don't learn anything about her.
We don't. No, we don't. But this is what we were expecting, right? We're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
A Black Widow movie. Let's go. Let's get something about her.
It's just kind of like a side quest. It's a over-the-top Fast and Furious style side quest that she happens to be a part of.
It's the Hobbs and Shaw of the MCU.
Actually, that's a great way of putting it. It's Hobbs and Shaw. This is not a Phase 4 start, right? So fucking WandaVision is a Phase 4 start for the TV series. Black Widow is not a Phase 4 start for the MCU. It's kind of like a quick fucking U-turn back to be like, hey, look, this is Black Widow that you know, but here's where we're heading right at the end with obviously Dark Avengers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are they actually called Dark Avengers?
Well, there's like a dark version.
Well, calling them Black Avengers wouldn't make sense.
It's Dark Avengers.
That's not what I meant.
But yeah, I mean, like most of the characters were I liked David Arbor in it.
It's hard to not like him.
It's hard to not like him, but even his character felt underdeveloped and it was very like, he was funny at times and I liked him a bit. It felt like it was almost, I don't know, was this supposed to be a TV show, but they didn't want to like half-ass it. I also just think it was messy. It was a messy movie and the direction was all over the place. I don't think the director did a good job.
I think most reflected in the editing, right? Jumping around.
Yeah,
a lot of
the
the
editing
times
was poor. And it made it feel messy and like you said, it was jumping all over the place. And then the writing was piss poor. And to be honest, I liked one genuine scene. I think I only liked one scene.
Family scene.
Genuinely.
Family scene.
Family
Eating
scene
dinner.
at the
That's
table.
it.
Pig family.
Family scene at the table, and then afterwards when they're talking.
Yeah.
I mean, Florence Pugh genuinely getting upset about the best moment of her life being called fake.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I was like, okay, I'm feeling it. And then immediately went back to like,
Immediately went back to, we're getting captured, but flashback explaining how we actually getting out of this. It's
like, the Ocean's 11 flashbacks of, we actually tricked her.
There wasn't, I guess, much going on in the family story. I thought there would be even more, especially when we found out that all of it was fake. That maybe they would touch on it even more, like the dynamic there. Because I think you have great actors, but you have a bad script and you don't have great direction. Then you're kind of wasting these actors, but they're still gonna shine in a moment like that when they're just sitting around even with the dialogue that they had, and the dialogue there was pretty good. I remember, I think, Lachlan, you went like, I'm really digging this.
Look, with the overall film, I'm not gonna lie, I did enjoy myself a little bit, and the aspect of David Harbour just being him is quite fun. What they've done though is we've got this character, right? So Scarlett Johansson is obviously the main character. She's the main aspect of this film. She's the Black Widow that we know.
Right.
What we think, right? But what this movie is trying to achieve is not only backstory for her, but over a 2 and a 15 hour, but let's just say 2 hour period of time is to give her character depth, right? And this movie is basically trying to get us to have better understanding of Natasha Romanoff's story in the overall MCU story so far, right? Yep. But here's the thing: we're basically trying to time travel back to be like, all right, cool. This is Natasha during Civil War. All right, cool. Now after this movie, she goes through the thought of Infinity War plus Endgame and sacrificed herself. She dies. She's dead. That's it. There's this story is essentially redundant because we know her end, right? We know the end of Captain America, which is why they didn't do any kind of, Steve Rogers story in this movie. If Steve Rogers just appeared at one point, right, it'd be like, all right, cool. He can't do anything because he time traveled back. We already know this timeline, right? With this film, whatever Natasha does is redundant because we know her end point. We know the fact that she sacrifices herself. All this film tries to do is try to give that character more depth and also set up the next phase where maybe Florence can take over the Black Widow helm, right? Yeah. That's the end credit scene. Natasha's dead. Florence is there. Dark Avenger setup, right? That's if that's what they're going for. Cool. That's the goal of this movie, is to give us a better understanding of Natasha. But the unfortunate thing is the fact that we already know what happens to her. We know the fact that at the end of in Endgame, she sacrifices herself. Cool, sick.
It also feels like it's more of a setup for the future than a focus on her depth or character.
Yeah.
Where was Budapest?
That's
fucking Budapest.
If we get a prequel, why don't we get Budapest?
Yeah, I would have preferred Natasha going from bad Russian kid killer to the Black Widow hero. How did Hawkeye convince her to change? Like, that could have been a more compelling story by far. But apart from the one good family scene, everything felt like it was kind of just pointless action, and funky spy stuff, and then let's build for the future of the MCU.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've been annoyed with recently, post Endgame, is everything is set up.
Yeah.
Everything in the MCU recently has just been setting up the future. Nothing has been individual. Loki is the closest we've come to an individual storyline. And that's why I think it's like, why we have to wait before we talk about it genuinely, because the 6th episode will depend on whether it feels like a standalone strong season or whether it's just a setup for the future again. And I get it, you need to set up a future universe, but this should have been Scarlett Johansson's swan song that she never got the chance to make.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's why I hated it so much at times, because I wanted a scene where it showed off how impressive she is as an actress, which she is. And instead, it kind of just focused on cheap, typical Marvel banter, action, and poor plotting and direction.
Yeah, a lot of the scenes with Pugh and Johansson were set up for, I guess, Pugh to be the quirky one.
Yeah.
And that's usually the protagonist, right? That's the Spider-Man kind of effect of pairing him up.
It took your attention to her rather than to Black Widow.
Yeah.
Black Widow kind of came across as the mentor that you see in half the movie. Yeah, and her quirkiness kind of drew the attention to her during most of the scenes.
What do we think about Taskmaster and her slowed downness? her slow motion movement.
I think the trailers definitely hyped her up.
She underwhelming, but I think just the fact that Taskmaster walks in slow motion most of the time while everyone else is in normal speed. And then they get away 6 times, which really makes Taskmaster feel kind of pathetic and useless. Winter Soldier was done so much better. I was intimidated when Winter Soldier came on the screen.
But I was about to say,
because he didn't walk in slow motion everywhere.
It wasn't the Winter Soldier Captain America film also a lot about Bucky? Maybe even more about
how
Bucky.
He was brainwashed and he was trying to, save him. And then in the end, he didn't want to fight Bucky. They've just done the same thing, but with Natasha and worse made. I mean, Bucky was a lot more inspiring as a character.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And he felt like the Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
When he walked on to, in through a scene, he was just forcing his way through it. I think the part where he walks onto the runway and he punches one guy, blows up a plane, and kicks another one into a jet engine, you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay,
and then Taskmaster introduction is just boom, car explosion.
and it was very look at Taskmaster walk in slow motion.
Think about this, right? All right. If we exclude the MCU, right, and we just kind of consider this as the next phase, right? Think of it like an Iron Man 1 with the is it the 12 rings, right? The 12 rings isn't as much of a threat as they are now until we get to Shanghai and the 12 rings, right? Now, they're definitely... Shanghai? Fuck.
Shanghai and the 10 rings.
Your boy's forgetting the name of the movies, right?
Shanghai's a place, Lachlan.
Shang-Chi.
Yeah, we're going to Taiwan in the 10 rings.
I'm forgetting everything that's going on in the MCU. So Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings is kind of like a readaptation of the original bad guy in Iron Man 1, right? So going back to also not only the idea of, this film being a little bit slower, they're reintroducing bad guys to kind of build up to the overall bad villain of that phase, right? So obviously Thanos being the main bad guy of the first 3 phases is the big end-all. So, Black Widow being the one where they've got the Taskmaster being the bad guy, I do not mind, because obviously it's the first introduction to the next phase. When was the last time we watched an MCU film, right? Endgame. Endgame was the last Marvel movie that we watched. So them jumping straight into the big bad, I don't mind. Taskmaster as an introduction is not a bad idea. Now, sure, the Taskmaster could be a great villain as ongoing, as being this character that can learn from each hero's abilities is a great idea, especially those whose abilities are physical. Doctor Strange would be a terrible opponent because his abilities are magical. But that's what the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse next film is going to be totally about. But having this physical character is not a bad idea. So,
But
I think
mean,
the
they
idea
kind
of me enjoying it. Go ahead.
de-villainized
Sorry.
her, right? At the end, I mean, she's not.
Yeah, no, it's not a villain.
She
I don't
It's
mind.
a tragic hero.
That's the
Same as
MCU
Bucky.
though at the moment, is the fact that they've got these villains that they could possibly turn into heroes. They've got these villains that they can use and turn into a character that you can go for. Loki was the villain of Avengers, and now we're all rooting for him.
Very different heroes.
No.
I mean,
No. I agree. A very different hero, but it's a character we can get behind. It's a character that they've eventually developed
No, but
depth for.
they did the same with Bucky, but I felt more at the end of Winter Soldier when Bucky's standing over Cap and he just doesn't know whether to hit him or not. Then at the end when Taskmaster's just kind of like taking a nap on the ground at the end, and it's very like, oh, especially because there's no relationship there. She was like, oh, you're a kid, I accidentally kind of blew up. I'm sorry. Yeah. Is he gone? It's like, wouldn't the kid be like, who the fuck are you? Like, we don't have a relationship.
So not every villain I'm expecting you to get behind. Like, I literally don't care if you get behind like Jeff Bridges behind shut up. Jeff Bridges behind Osava in Iron Man 1. Like, that's one
Jeff
character that they've moved aside. Shut the fuck up. I don't mind if they've got the occasional character that they will just, use once, move on, okay? But there are definitely characters within the Marvel comic universe that are very important, right? Killmonger, but there's necessarily, he's not dead. He says very cautiously at the chance that he might not be dead. Like the fact that he might not be dead is a great option for them to move forward. But again, we can't say until
Should be the next
Black Panther 2 comes along, but we're not going to expect the original villain of Iron Man 1 to come along. There's definitely one-dimensional villains that they've had, and they've moved on.
I just think Taskmaster was a weak villain, man. She was one-dimensional, and I was like, throwaway. I'm not going to remember Taskmaster.
I think they would have done they could have done something more visually interesting with her fighting style. Like, even maybe it would have been too Iron Man-esque to cut inside and see what move she's doing. But I think it would have aided to make that character a bit more interesting.
Yeah, it's just a bit weak. I think the thing is, I wish Killmonger comes back. I think he should be the next Black Panther. Like, a redemption arc would be great there. Like, imagine waking up and T'Challa's dead, and the last thing that happened was he got his life spared, and he's the only last one that has that power, the Black Panther power, and they're like, well, you've got to step up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that Ryan Coogler figured something out that works pretty
they'll
well.
figure something out. But I just think, that's a great idea. But, I mean, if they're like, Taskmaster's back, I'd be like, I don't care. It was a weak villain. I can't remember. I remember as soon as we saw it, I was like, oh, I reckon that's Taskmaster.
It is also technology, so it could be used by someone else in the future, I guess.
The thing is, it's technology again. It's not the individual that has gained the power or earned the power. It's just technology. And technology is a fun power to have, but it's also a limiting power. And it does frustrate me that Marvel uses technology as an out to explain anything. And the thing is, you're a comic book universe. You can just have fucking powers. Yeah. It's okay.
Maybe they do the Mandarin thing, and in a couple of years, they bring in a new Taskmaster. There's always that possibility.
I think with the MCU is grounding it in a semi-universe that's believable to us is not a bad idea.
And grey looking.
Yeah,
but that's not okay. But that's like, okay, if you ever read, like, Tolkien talks about, I mean, Tolkien wrote an essay on fairy stories and about grounding fable in scientific reality, and it doesn't come from technology.
Yeah,
it simply comes from taking the world seriously. Like, he talks about, if there's one thing you can't parody, it's the magic.
Yeah.
And so you watch Thor. I don't see Thor and I'm not like, oh, magic, that's not real. Even Guardians of the Galaxy, which is so over the top, but it's like, yeah, technology, but also just aliens are a bit different, a bit stronger. What about mutations? It's like, just make them mutants. I think Marvel has just done it too much now. Everything is just technology. At the start, it made sense. I was like, I get it, especially around the Iron Man period. It's hard to jump into another universe. So around Iron Man, everything being technology, I was like, that makes sense. But once a giant fucking purple titan with magic stones can blow up or wipe out half the universe, I think it's fine if you don't focus on everything having a tech base.
The goldfish
kind of
guy
like
has to be
reality
an
to it.
illusion, okay, Rory?
So,
Well, like,
what do
Can't be.
you reckon? With obviously Marvel now acquiring Fox, the mutant universe is now available for them to use within the MCU. Obviously, we think the MCU is going to go a bit further, but obviously the idea of the mutant universe going forward is that extra layer on top, the frosting on top of this cake, right? We've had this idea of this technology-driven universe. Iron Man, even Wakanda is basically a technology-driven universe. How do you think they're going to incorporate mutants, right?
Well, it's got to be
'Cause
another
the
big
whole,
event, right?
Another bigger event of
Okay, well,
mutated
I think-
humans?
okay, I think they are going to start embracing and they're going to start leaving technology. And I think the
I hope
evidence
so.
in that was in Thor. In the first Thor movie, Thor says to Jane Foster, "It's not magic or technology; it's one and the same."
Yeah.
In the second Thor
Science.
movie, they make a mistake because the director and the writer was an absolute twat. And he talks about how we're not gods, we're just aliens, we just live a long time. And they really try and make it realistic.
yeah.
And they need to ground it. And it's like, and everything has this weird technology side to it. Like Asgard has laser beams and stuff.
Mm.
And it was absolute horse shit. They tried to ground it in reality and add some tech to it and make it, oh, we're not gods. And then in Thor Ragnarok, they really embraced the god side of it all of a sudden. God of mischief. Thor, I'm god of thunder. What are you the god of again, brother? They really embraced that. And I think that is kind of Marvel coming over the hump of like, we have to ground it. Otherwise people won't like it because it'll be fantasy based. And I think Thor kind of shows how they've kind of been like, you know what, fuck it. They're gods. We have gods.
Yeah.
Because in the comics, in the new Thor comics, they talk about that. Like a lot of cultures and aliens even have different gods, and we're about to get Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, who is a god-slaying character in the comics. His mission is to kill all gods, and we have Zeus, played by oh my god, Gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
Russell
Russell
Crowe.
Crowe, yeah.
Russell Crowe will be playing Zeus. So we're embracing different
Insane,
mythologies
right?
and gods.
Yeah.
And I think finally Marvel's just, and Shang-Chi is magical Chinese mythology being brought into it. There's a dragon in the trailer. Abomination's back fighting Wong. in a
Dude,
cage
how
fight.
crazy Abomination
fuck
coming
was
back,
that?
right?
But that's what I mean. I think finally Marvel, I think Phase 4 onwards, and I think that's why I was disappointed with Black Widow going that route, is because it was the safe route back to, and if it was around Iron Man time, and this is why I think kind of when we're talking about if it came out based before Iron Man, it would be like, no, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
I think it's time to just like, I think Phase 4, like Loki multiverse, Loki magical powers that he's just flaunting in the TV show. I think it's finally going to be Marvel's just going to kind of let go of the base in reality, and they're going to really just embrace the comic book side of it, because some of the best parts in Endgame and Infinity War, the Doctor Strange versus Thanos fight was imaginative and funky and fun. And then we have Thor coming in with into Wakanda. I think it's going to be finally they're going to start embracing a bit more of that mystical side, which can elevate things without having to always, because technology is cool and it can add power, but it also limits what you can do, because technology has to be based in reality, and you can only limit what your reality is by the technology that you have. As soon as you just embrace the magic and the fable and the lore, then it's fine. You're limited only by that.
I think the multiverse also, it might be an easy way to bring in a lot of new things into a science-driven universe, like something like the mutants. You could just bring it in there and like rewrite a lot of the stuff. Maybe even work with, apart from the what ifs, like with different timelines. But I don't know how far they'll go that route, because they're so set on keeping it in a continued kind of order that is, I think, easily digestible for people who aren't even that into Marvel. But at this point, I think it is really made for people who are really into it. But now with Phase 4, maybe they are trying off the back end of Endgame to build something new with a bunch of one-off things that might have more of a magic focus. I'd be down for that as well. I mean, at this point, I want to see the next Fast and Furious film be sung, first of all, as a musical, and then have magic mushrooms the whole time, being on a wild trip through space.
Interesting, yeah.
And basically, like Black Widow, we mentioned it a couple times when we watched it. It felt like a Fast and Furious film, like the most recent one. But yeah, I think that wraps it up for today. Actually, speaking of F9, it's going to be the movie we talk about next week. But what did you guys land on as a rating for Black Widow?
I gave it a 6 out of 10. The main reason I gave it more than a 5, which would be just an average film, is not just David Harbour, but just the characters in general. Other than Rachel Weisz, which I didn't mind overall, I do think both Scarlett, Florence, and David Harbour gave just an overall really good performance of their characters. I enjoyed it. I found it quite fun. I'm going to ignore all the shit CGI, really, because
lots of
if
fire
I really
and
think about it, all I
explosions.
can think about is the fire and explosions is wow. I did enjoy the film overall. Look, as an introduction to Phase 4, I'm going to suggest that WandaVision, Falcon, and Loki are the introduction, and then
the Spider-Man film later this year,
and then
right?
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I won't suggest this as the introduction to Phase 4. I guess this is just a
Stepping stone in a sense, right?
I wouldn't even say stepping stone. I would say a closed loop for the character of Black Widow to introduce us to a new series, a new
Hawkeye.
I guess phase. Hawkeye. Yes, Hawkeye is the introduction to Phase 4. All of the other things have been a series to Phase 3.5. It's kind of like a Minecraft update. Phased,
Right.
but not perfected, and anything that's not perfect is a bug and
You're
was
making this
meant
for
to
the
be.
Zoomers.
Yeah. So no, I end up in a 6.5. I didn't mind the film.
6.5.
I don't mind it.
Yeah. Rory, what about you?
To be honest, I was going to give it a 4, mainly because a lot of it had to do with the fact that I just really felt like Black Widow deserved more,
Mhm.
and they cared more about setting random shit up in the future than actually giving the character a proper send-off and standalone film. But I'll admit, kind of like what Lachlan said about David Harbour, and there was that family scene at the table, which I genuinely just liked. I'm probably going to give it a 5. I can't give it more than a 5 because some of the CGI took me out of it. God, some of the directing and editing choices were just like, what? Like, what were you thinking? But
Yeah.
there were moments that I enjoyed it. There were moments that I was like, actually, yeah, that's good. Or I genuinely was a bit like, oh, I want to hear this. Like, this sounds interesting.
Mhm.
The hint that Captain America was still doing shit.
Yeah, you shushed us when we talked over that scene.
Because I was like, I think that's what they're saying. I think they're saying that he's still vibing even after he came back in time. Because I think there's been a lot of memes about he didn't do anything. He just had to ignore stuff. But it's like interesting to think that, oh no, he was actually involved in certain things.
Mhm.
So there is that. But there's just so many moments where I felt disappointed.
Right.
And
yeah.
I didn't want to be. I was excited for Black Widow because I liked the character. But this just added nothing to her for me. And it added no interesting characters to the universe, except I guess Red Guardian was fun and entertaining. And I'm interested, I guess, to see what Florence Pugh becomes. But not a whole lot. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on most points. I wasn't as excited for the film because I kind of was going in expecting a setup for the next Black Widow with Florence Pugh. So I was able to keep my expectations maybe a bit more in check. This is just another stepping stone for the MCU, setting up a bunch of new films and doing something that was long overdue, but then not doing it right at all. It wasn't as bad as the new Wonder Woman film. That one was way worse. I think it has strong moments. It has especially strong performances with a shitty script. And for that, I give it a 5 out of 10. I'm leaning maybe more towards a 6 than a 4, but yeah, for me it's
I
a
think,
5.
funnily enough, this is obviously the introduction to Phase 4. The next films that are following are Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way From Home, Doctor Strange, Multiverse. These are
Are we
all
getting
films that
3
are going-
more films this year?
At least
we-
2021, we're getting 3 more films. These
Damn.
are, especially the first 3, Eternals, Ten Rings, and Spider-Man No Way From Home, they're all movies that are going to introduce like very new dimensional characters in Eternals. Shang-Chi, I guess, very magical characters, and Spider-Man is going to introduce us to the multiverse. These are characters we've never had in the MCU.
Mhm.
I think Black Widow is a great way to introduce us to this next world where it's like, this is familiar, but they're going to add new characters like Taskmaster and things like that. I think where Black Widow fits is somewhere like Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's a movie that involves characters that we know and a new character that we might like the Wasp, that can continue on after Black Widow's finished, like Ant-Man continuing us with the Wasp. So this movie as a whole, I'm not going to lie, I did enjoy some of the aspects of it. Overall, I did enjoy it. Overall, some people might not like it, but I think as an introduction to Phase 4, it would fit into Phase 3 more than anything, like a little in-between Ant-Man and the Wasp and maybe Captain Marvel, but I can't choose what Marvel does. I think the next couple films that follow should be stronger than what this film is. And I think definitely, I kind of am going to assume that the next films are not only going to be stronger from both a direction standpoint and an overall standpoint of what this phase is going to be, but I think that the next couple films are going to just slowly start introducing where we're going to be going.
Yeah. Yep, I think so as well. It's definitely a promising future for the MCU. They're not going to stop anytime soon. With all the success.
I'm also like 7 drinks in, and I don't know what I'm saying.
I'm sorry again for
when it is, because you were drunk during the film. You're like, dude, that was great. I love the part where the Hulk came in and fought Thor. Lachlan was actually not even watching Black Widow with us.
Do you guys know they're making a Suicide Squad film that's part of the MCU? And a Fantastic Four movie.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of today's show. Next week, we are looking at 9,